Taylor Swift is really driving some people in the MAGA movement totally crazy.
She's a tremendous woman. I'm sure Taylor Swift has nothing or doesn't know anything about her.
Taylor Swift's public denouncement of Donald Trump after his turbulent first months in office following his second election victory over Kamala Harris was nothing short of explosive. It wasn't simply a celebrity offering a passing opinion. It felt seismic, because Swift's intervention came at a moment when the country was already deeply fractured, and her words cut through the fog of political noise with the clarity of someone whose influence extends well beyond music. The mere fact that she spoke out so directly against Trump, accusing him of secret infidelities and characterizing his presidency as a betrayal of public trust, was enough to transform the cultural and political conversation overnight. What made this especially potent was the timing. Barely months into his renewed presidency, when Trump was still trying to solidify his second-term agenda, he found himself being openly condemned by one of the world's most famous entertainers. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The clash between Swift and Trump wasn't an ordinary dispute between celebrity and politician. It was a collision of cultural power and political authority. Trump had always prided himself on commanding the stage, whether through bombastic rallies, combative press appearances, or a steady stream of social media provocation. But Swift brought an entirely different kind of power to the table. Soft power, rooted in her artistry, her global reach, and her ability to frame narratives in ways that resonate with millions of people across demographics. While politicians speak in policy, Swift speaks in emotion and values, and when she leveled her accusations against Trump, it didn't just sting, it spread like wildfire across communities that may otherwise have felt disengaged from the nitty-gritty of Washington politics. Her decision to go on the offensive against Trump reflected the degree to which the cultural arena had become inseparable from the political one. The entertainment world, long accused of staying neutral to preserve its broad audience, had been shifting steadily toward more outspoken activism, and Swift had emerged as one of the most prominent figures in that shift. Her earlier reluctance to take firm political stances was often criticized, but by the time of Trump's second term, that hesitancy had evaporated. She had evolved into someone who used her fame as a megaphone for causes she deemed urgent. Thus, her condemnation of Trump wasn't just about him as a politician, it was about what he represented: corruption, betrayal, and the erosion of moral standards at the highest level of office. What intensified the drama was her direct accusation of Trump's secret affairs while married to Melania. For decades, rumors about Trump's personal life had circulated, but coming from someone with Swift's credibility and massive platform, these allegations carried a new weight. The accusation pierced through the narrative Trump had carefully built about loyalty and strength. It turned personal, and by extension, political. Swift's attack framed Trump not only as a leader failing in his duties, but also as a man incapable of upholding basic fidelity and respect within his own marriage. The cultural symbolism of that accusation resonated strongly. If he could betray his wife, how could he be trusted not to betray his country? For Swift, it was also a defining moment in her public persona. She had already been increasingly associated with advocacy, supporting women's rights, LGBTQ+ equality, and voter registration efforts. By taking on Trump in this way, she aligned herself with a larger moral struggle against what she and many others saw as the normalization of dishonesty, corruption, and cruelty in public life. It was not simply a celebrity scolding a politician. It was a woman positioning herself as a counterforce to the chaos of his presidency. This had broader implications, suggesting that the fight for the nation's soul wasn't going to come solely from the traditional political establishment, but also from voices in culture who refused to remain silent. The reaction from Trump's base was predictably furious. They had always painted Swift as part of an elitist entertainment world disconnected from ordinary Americans, and this new salvo reinforced their hostility. But what mattered more was the way her statements galvanized young people and moderates who were already uneasy about Trump's second term. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about tax codes or foreign policy, it was about integrity, character, and the moral compass of leadership. Swift's intervention reoriented the debate forcing people to confront not just what Trump was doing as president, but who he was as a person. That shift was powerful because it pierced through the partisan rhetoric and asked a more fundamental question about the kind of example a leader should set. The clash also illuminated how the boundaries between entertainment and governance had almost entirely dissolved in the American landscape. Trump himself had blurred those lines long before, having risen to political prominence partly through his celebrity persona. Swift stepping into that arena was both a response to and a continuation of this phenomenon. Her decision to confront him so directly revealed that in this era, cultural figures could no longer be dismissed as irrelevant to political discourse. Their words carried as much, if not more, influence than traditional politicians. Swift's critique demonstrated that in a fragmented media landscape, celebrity voices can reach people in ways congressional speeches or policy papers never could. Moreover, her accusations about Trump's alleged affairs raised deeper questions about transparency and accountability. Whether or not the specifics of those claims could be verified, their impact lay in the way they shaped public perception. Politics has always been as much about narrative as fact, and Swift effectively reshaped the narrative around Trump's second term. Instead of focusing solely on legislative battles, scandals over loyalty and trustworthiness became front and center. The suggestion of hypocrisy, projecting a family man image while allegedly engaging in secret betrayals, reinforced the sense of cynicism surrounding his leadership. Swift tapped into that existing suspicion and magnified it. There was also a symbolic dimension in the way her voice contrasted with Melania's silence. Throughout Trump's presidency, Melania had often been a distant, enigmatic figure, rarely commenting on her husband's controversies. Swift's intervention almost positioned her as an advocate for Melania, indirectly highlighting the unfairness and betrayal she may have endured. In doing so, Swift turned the spotlight onto the First Lady, complicating the image of a unified family that Trump often projected. This dynamic created an added layer of tension because it framed Trump's alleged actions not only as political misconduct, but also as deeply personal betrayals with human costs. On a broader scale, Swift's clash with Trump underscored the rising expectations for celebrities to use their platforms responsibly. The days of neutrality in entertainment were increasingly behind us. Audiences demanded that cultural figures take sides, stand for something, and engage in the urgent debates shaping the nation's future. Swift's condemnation of Trump reflected that shift, embodying the idea that silence in the face of injustice was no longer acceptable. She understood that her words would carry immense weight, and she chose to wield that influence not just for personal branding, but as part of a larger cultural battle. Her intervention also became a moment of reflection about generational change. Swift represented a younger, more progressive vision of America, one rooted in inclusivity, transparency, and empathy. Trump represented a more traditional, combative, and often regressive approach to leadership. Their clash symbolized the broader struggle between these two visions of the nation's future. For younger Americans, Swift became a voice articulating their frustrations with a political system that seemed broken, while Trump remained a figurehead for those yearning to preserve a sense of older authority. This wasn't just about one celebrity versus one politician. It was about two Americas colliding, with Swift embodying the aspirations of a rising generation. The fact that her accusations centered on Trump's personal conduct also tapped into long-standing debates about gender, power, and accountability. For centuries, powerful men had engaged in infidelities and abuses without facing meaningful consequences. By calling Trump out, Swift was implicitly demanding that the same standards of accountability apply to him as to anyone else. Her intervention was therefore not just political, but feminist in its implications. It challenged the normalization of male power being exercised without restraint or consequence, and it demanded a reckoning with the ethical standards of leadership. This episode also highlighted the fragility of Trump's image. He had always cultivated a persona of strength, dominance, and invulnerability, but Swift's accusations chipped away at that facade. Suddenly, instead of being the figure commanding fear and loyalty, he was cast as a man whose personal weaknesses were exposed on a global stage. The cultural resonance of Swift's words ensured that the accusations couldn't simply be brushed aside as tabloid gossip. They were amplified through mainstream discourse, forcing even Trump supporters to confront uncomfortable questions about his integrity. For the political establishment, Swift's intervention presented a dilemma. On the one hand, some politicians were eager to distance themselves from celebrity activism, arguing that it trivialized serious issues. On the other hand, They couldn't ignore the immense influence her words carried. Lawmakers and pundits alike found themselves responding not to policy briefings or legislative proposals, but to Swift's public critique. This reversal of roles underscored the shifting dynamics of influence in the modern era. Cultural voices could now dictate the terms of debate as much as, if not more than, elected officials. The scale of attention Swift drew also demonstrated the power of storytelling in shaping politics. Her condemnation wasn't delivered in dry policy language, but in vivid emotional terms that connected with audiences on a visceral level. That ability to transform politics into narrative is one of the most effective tools in modern discourse. Swift didn't need to hold office or draft legislation to have impact. She only needed to frame Trump's presidency in terms that exposed his flaws in ways people could feel. That's why her words resonated so strongly. They told a story about betrayal, dishonesty, and the dangers of power unchecked. Even more intriguing was the way her denunciation blurred lines of allegiance. Swift's music had long reached across political divides, appealing to both conservative and liberal listeners. By stepping into direct conflict with Trump, she risked alienating segments of her audience. But that risk only amplified the courage of her stance. She demonstrated that there were moments in history when commercial calculations had to give way to moral imperatives. In that sense, her confrontation with Trump became a case study in the responsibilities of influence, showing that true leadership often comes at a cost. The event also illustrated how quickly the political narrative could shift when cultural forces entered the arena. Within days of Swift's remarks, news outlets across the spectrum were dissecting her accusations, analyzing her influence, and debating the broader meaning of her clash with Trump. In a media ecosystem often dominated by political insiders, her intervention disrupted the usual cycles, ensuring that discussions about Trump's early months in office were framed through the lens of morality and trustworthiness rather than dry legislative maneuvers. That disruption alone was a form of cultural power in action. As her words reverberated, they exposed the vulnerabilities of Trump's second-term strategy. He had sought to present himself as renewed, vindicated by victory over Kamala Harris, ready to solidify his legacy. Instead, he was now mired in controversies not only about governance, but also about his personal life. Swift's accusations served as a reminder that a leader's character cannot be compartmentalized from his policies. The two are inseparable, and any attempt to ignore personal misconduct would inevitably bleed into public trust. That message cut to the heart of the Trump presidency, where personal scandal had always loomed large but never before been framed so powerfully by someone outside of politics. Her intervention, though controversial, showed that political accountability doesn't have to come only from within the system. Sometimes it comes from those outside of it, who are unwilling to stay silent in the face of perceived wrongdoing. Swift's words became a form of cultural oversight, holding Trump to account not through legal mechanisms, but through the force of public judgment. In that sense, her confrontation with him wasn't just a headline. It was part of a larger democratic process where every voice, even one from outside politics, contributes to the shaping of national consciousness. What made Swift's denunciation even more consequential was the ripple effect it had on global perceptions of American leadership. Her words didn't remain confined to U.S. audiences. They were broadcast across international outlets, where Trump's presidency was already viewed with skepticism. For many abroad, Swift's accusations served as confirmation that dissent against him was not limited to political rivals, but extended into the heart of American culture itself. That global echo undermined Trump's attempts to project strength on the world stage, suggesting that even within his own country's most celebrated figures, there was a profound loss of confidence in his ability to lead. The controversy also underscored how the boundaries of political discourse had expanded beyond government halls. Swift's attack was dissected in classrooms, workplaces, and online forums, sparking debates not just about Trump, but about the responsibility of public figures in shaping civic life. Younger generations in particular viewed her stance as validation that cultural leaders could and should speak truth to power. This empowerment carried long-term implications, as it fostered a new expectation that figures in entertainment wield their platforms as instruments of accountability. Swift's voice, therefore, wasn't just one more critique of Trump. It symbolized a turning point in how society demanded transparency from those at the highest levels. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Taylor Swift calling out Trump's alleged affairs? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.